Chapter 23. It begins. They get his DNA from a cigarette butt flicked into the rocks, right where he left me that morning. It matches the traces of his identity found all over my body. Before he left the crass genetic fingerprint behind, investigators watched as Tom Martin kept returning over and over to the crime scene. When Ruby made the call, when she reported Tom's comment about pictures and what she'd seen and heard down by the water, and she hadn't known camera lens were fourth on Detective O'Brien's list of blunt force weapons. Underneath the word flashlight, but above wrench and hammer, circled in red pen over and over. After Noah asked if they found Alicia, the only thing along with the purple sneakers and jacket my benefactor could say for sure was missing from my room, camera lens, a weapon of opportunity. This fit Detective O'Brien profile of the man they were looking for, an anger retaliatory type, someone impulsive with his rage. The excessive force used, the way the body was left face down, subjugated. Every offender leaves a series of clues about himself, and Detective O'Brien had known the motivation of the man who killed Alice Lee from the moment he saw the placement of the young girl's body on the rocks. Ruby's call was mental, up his spine, bringing him to his feet. It wasn't enough to bring Tom in, but O'Brien was a patient man. The detective immediately had his team of undercover officers position themselves down at the river each day, a small parade of inconspicuous investigators jogging, stretching, sitting in the sun, eyes flicking when the tall blond man returned again and again to the river, watching as he leaned over the railing, staring across the water. At the same time, detectives canvassed every camera store, every pawn shop in the vicinity, showing an image of Tom Martin, asking, "Have you seen this man? Have you seen this man?" Over and over, looking for the proof they needed in a manner so direct that people started over their nose, wondering what would happen to the poor store owner or cashier who might say yes. One or two guessed this was all to do with the dead girl, the pretty one in the news, though they never said my name out loud, reluctant to find themselves caught up in something they had absolutely nothing to do with. Not this time around. That same week, at O'Brien's request, they searched the river, calculated shifting tides and weather patterns, and the days since Ruby saw Tom down on the rocks and heard him throw something in the water. The current gives up its secrets eventually. Message in bottle shows up on foreign shores 100 years after being tossed into the sea. The Hudson River connects to the Atlantic Ocean, shares the same rolling waters, feels the same pull of the moon, and so they find it one night in the brackish muck offered by the tides, handed over. A summer 50mm screw mount lens, nickel-plated steel, specks of my blood like rust in the grooves of the aperture ring. Turns out the past sticks to whoever it touches. You cannot simply wash it away. Detective O'Brien is quite thoughtful as they inch closer to the unequivocal proof they need. He is certain they will not find the camera itself. This is a man who would like to preserve his souvenirs, which leads O'Brien to the matter of the photographs, picture, as Tom calls them, that slips up of his was deliberate in its way. Men like this eventually give themselves away. They betray their own secrets because they do so desperately want to stay at the center of things. Narcissism makes a person careless, no matter how clever they might be. If Tom held onto the camera, had it hidden somewhere, the undeveloped film must have been called into him, not knowing what was on that roll, especially when the body remained unidentified so long. Would have a man like that burning up those pictures, whatever they might reveal, would be the ultimate proof of his achievement. Only he would know who the girl was. He could own every part of her now. By O'Brien's calculation, Tom Martin would have been less likely to get the film developed once his victim was publicly identified. Once that Jane Doe sketch was replaced with real-life images of Alice Lee, impulsivity had its limits, so they'd be looking for activity soon after the crime and somewhere outside the city. These men might be careless, but in O'Brien's experience, they were seldom openly stupid. It was the 12th Film Process Lab they checked, a boutique store specialized in analog photography, just on 2 hours' drive from Manhattan. Well promoted online, easy enough to find by a Google search. When they showed the lab owner a picture of Tom, she bit her lip and said, "Yeah, I think I remember him. He was here maybe a month ago from out of state," he said. "Most people like him mailed their film to us and we sent it back a CD, but he said he wanted prints. He never came back actually. I have those prints here somewhere, and the negatives of course. Some of them didn't turn out so well. I left behind my version of the city." I took pictures of the straying wide bridges and the Chrysler building and people streaming out of the subway. I snapped Lady Liberty from the deck of the Staten Island ferry and the effective rise of One World Trade Center, this disorientation of Times Square and the statue of my namesake in Central Park. Little kids hanging off her like decoration. I was in every one of these places and I captured every moment, and now they exist as proof I was here. Detective O'Brien thumbs through each photograph, scans every black and white image, and it's the second to last shot that feels like a punch. Heavy rain, rocks, a swollen river, the lights of New Jersey hazy on the outside of the water, and then the last picture I snapped, lightning reflecting in the flowing river. And because I was still learning the print on my purple sneaker in the bottom left of the frame, here in his hand, he's hiding my last moment. He's seeing that what I saw right before a man came out of the rain and got angry enough to put his hands to my throat, to rip the camera from me and smash it down on my skull, angry enough to thrust into my dying body, scraping my back against the rocks, heaving over me and pouring into me, and I was not there anymore. I was already outside of myself, but it was still my body as he fell, grunted over what was left of me, hot breath and stickiness and on cold skin, the wretched sound of him tucking himself in, zipping himself up, the sound that said he was finished, done with me. O'Brien was right. Tom couldn't resist the mystery, found the memory of what he'd done was not enough to keep him satisfied, so he carefully removed the film found out by the lab he thought would be far enough away from the river. He had always intended to come back for the prints, but then found out my name and my face was everywhere again, my real face this time, the one he had looked away from as he killed me. Realizing how stupid he was, how caught up he'd been, Tom never went back to collect those pictures, but he could not stop returning to the river. At first he was careful to avoid the scene as usual at usual times, at 5 a.m. and midnight when he felt the strongest pull. He made sure he only ever went down there when he could blend in and remain inconspicuous himself. When Ruby finally came along, he was there waiting, and from the moment he saw her leaning against the rails, her eyes closed, muscles flickering, Tom was certain she was aware what had happened there. He assumed a straight pride swelling in his chest. This woman was caught up in the drama of the dead girl. He had seen others like this at the vigil, the night of candles and outrage. So many skittish women, foolishly thinking their fear was anger, or that it made a difference in the end. He had bowed his head at the night, standing next to his wife, and she had squeezed his hand when she saw a tear wind down his cheek. She thought he was crying for the girl, but he was crying at the beauty of it all, for the magnificence of this grand tragedy he had orchestrated. How could it not fail to move him after he had felt unseen, unheard for so long? When he approached Ruby and asked her to join him for coffee, Tom never thought to imagine she was the one who found the body. This incredible news, when she finally told him, was like electricity, a body heat reminiscent of the first moment he struck me. It felt like fate, the way the Australian was delivered to him so easily. Finally, he would have the chance to talk with someone who knew, someone who was theirs. After so many weeks, it was beginning to feel like a dream. Talking about it would make it blessedly real again, but she kept refusing, swatting him away, and it was taking all his energy not to explode. Sitting across from the table from him that second time, drinking wine he paid for, eating food he ordered just for her. Ruby was so pious and polite. He had visceral yearning to strike her, to watch her fall, to fall over her himself. It was too bad the weather had not gone his way that day. It was an accident, the verbal slip when he said goodbye to her. He was too caught up in the idea of Ruby out there alone that morning, thinking how easy it would be to drag her over to the construction site further along the river, metal and dirt for this one, not rocks and water. He just wasn't paying attention to his words. Still, the Australian hadn't reacted at the time. There was nothing in her face to say she picked up on his mistake, and he never expected the truth of his words to be followed. The breadcrumbs of those pictures taken all over the city. His second mistake, leaving the cigarettes butt behind, offering up his DNA when they couldn't yet take it from him, occurs the same day. Detective O'Brien holds up pictures in his hand, something carelessly discarded, something found. I like to think it all happened at the exact same time. He never expected a knock on the door, the same kind of knock made for Mr. Jackson, only this time when Tom Martin answers, there are men who stand at attention at the other side of the door. His wife comes into the hallway as they clasp handcuffs around his wrists. Tommy. At first it is confusion. Tommy, then fear. She lunges towards her husband, but the officer blocks her way. Ma'am, they say, holding back. I'm sorry, ma'am. so polite in those last moments before they take apart her whole existence, before they deliver a revelation that leaves her gasping on the floor. Her husband arrested for the rape and murder of Alice Lee. She held his hand tight at the vigil, gently laughed off his concerns about being careful these days when that man could be anywhere. That man could be anywhere. There will never be enough days to scrub clean the lies Tom Martin had poured all over this woman's body. Each revelation that will come, the hardcore underage pornography of his computer, the fake profiles he posted on dating sites, the bags of amphetamines hidden in his closet, an ex-girlfriend who said he had stalked her when she left him, and soon enough the details of how he smashed an 18-year-old girl's head with the lens of her camera, squeezed her throat with nicotine-stained fingers, and continued his assault of her body as she lay dying on the banks of the Hudson River. How he scooped up her underwear and shoes and jacket and unscrewed the bloody lens from the camera, all the while standing over the battered body of a teenage girl. Though no one will ever understand the horrific specificity of her horror, this is the part that will come to haunt his wife the most, the calmness with which her husband must have packed up the evidence of a young life, the calculation of what to keep and what to leave behind. Nothing will ever again be true for this woman. It is never just one life these men destroy. Now it's time for his story to be told, for the papers to sift through his life, figure out why he did what he did. But it doesn't really matter, does it? You already know enough about him. I don't want to tell this story. I don't even want to say his name anymore. I don't see why he is the one who should be pieced together. Remember, I'm Alice Lee, and this is my story. They got him. They got him. At first, Ruby is stunned to live with a question for so long. It takes time for the answer to feel right, to make sense. She stares at the man's face in the news, goes over her time with him, and it feels as though something is crawling all over her skin, burrowing in, not the dull, staring all sadness of finding my body, but a burnt and itch that infects her. I do my best to take my memories back, those awful things she could suddenly see and feel, but somewhere in the haze of her fever, she refuses to look away from what she saw. In the end, I simply sit with her, whispering other stories, sweet and soft, so Ruby might have more than one truth to remember when the fever breaks. The female member of Death Club comfort as they can. Sue delivers food, pies, cakes and muffins, things that are warm and fresh when Ruby cannot get herself out of bed. Lenny brings flowers, make sure her windows are kept open. Side by side, they read the onslaught of news stories, confront those terrible truths together, and on the first fitful night after the rest, Lenny stays to help Ruby Lenny stays to help Ruby fall asleep. She calls Cassie when Ruby is sitting next to her, cannot find the words, and provides assurance of safety and care to worried family and friends back home. She's had a shock, yes, but she's brilliant. Yeah, really, Cassie. Your sister solved a freaking crime. I think she may even get a medal. Later, when her fever subsides, Ruby makes 3 phone calls. First, a conversation with Cassie and her mother to reassure them she really is okay, all things considered. By now, news that the Riverside murder had been solved has crossed the Pacific, made its way into Australian papers and magazines. Ruby's an invisible thread throughout the unnamed beginning and end of things. Few readers will ever know how she tied this story together, but that's the way she wants it to be. This story, she says, is always belongs to Alice. After talking with her friends, ending the call with a promise to avoid dead bodies from now on, Ruby calls Noah. She guesses correctly that he will be tentative about the new developments, will want to know the specifics of how she came to identify the man who killed his friend, but will not want to discuss the man himself. He cannot even look at the mugshots, he tells Ruby, unaccustomed to rage, to the incessant vengeful desires evoked by looking at those photographs. Noah instinctively understands men like that feed on such reactions. He resolves to starve my murder of oxygen until he is reduced to nothing. You brave, brave woman, Noah says as they close this call. Thank you for everything you've done for Alice. The last call Ruby makes is Josh. He answers on the second ring, as if he has been waiting for her. I'm sorry, they say at the same time, as if they have been waiting for each other. He tells her Sue's lecture was fierce, worse than his own mother's, and then when Lenny was furious with him. You don't kiss someone without the full story, she told him. You don't take away that choice. He asked about what happened, expressing his awe and confusion at the events he has missed in such a small amount of time. You can tell me anything, he said. I'm here for whatever you need. Ruby, tired of saying the same things over, asked Josh for his own full story instead. He tells her that his marriage disintegrated after the bike accident. In those first few months of recovery, his body began to feel like a foreign object, something illogically attached to him. and he often felt like one of those walking corpses, neither here nor there in any situation. It was like his real body had gone on ahead without him. Knowing this could not be true, feeling his pulse flicker in his wrist and the gnawing pain of bones slowly fusing back together, he rationally understood he was still on electric current, alive, but the black kept pulling him in. The tar kept spreading until his mind was sick with it. The sardonic rider he used to be, trapped in his viciousness, and he was not the only one who wondered if he would ever write or feel light again. At first Lizzie had been supportive, staying close to his bedside in the hospital, hovering around him at home, but the longer he lived in the darkness, the more restless his wife became. You have situational depression, she kept asserting, flicking through websites on her iPad, presenting little facts to her husband each night. He says here the situational depression is common in men who, and off she would go reading aloud from his magazine, a article or that hunting down expert opinion on why, after leaving the hospital, Josh remained reluctant to get back to his old life, to his old self, trying to resolve why he was suddenly a blank slate, why none of the usual things impressed upon him or moved him, and why a fact almost alarming to anyone who knew how connected he had been before the accident. His new state of being did not seem to panic him, no matter how many long days and longer nights had passed. It took Lizzie 6 months to leave him. She'd been out in LA for over a year now, waiting for a TV show. At first she held out hope that old Josh would come back. "We'll get you a shaman," she had said around 2 months after settling in the West Coast. "They can go so much deeper than the others, down to where you've gone." She sent him meditation videos and links to yoga retreats in Bali, things to bring him back to her, to the indulgent rhythms of their relationship, before he decided to bike home through Central Park one night, and his wheel hit a tree root and everything got rearranged. She missed her rooftop parties and her drug haze fucking, and seeing her husband named as a byline on in her favorite magazine. But eventually her love ran out, just a little and then a lot, as if it had only ever come from a limited supply. Lizzie had long since stopped talking about smudge sticks and hill or desert plants, and now her emails and texts reference divorce papers and selling the apartment on East 97th. He has been avoiding this next step, he tells Ruby, not because he wants to work on the marriage, rather he has been happy for things to just stay as they are, afraid he admits now of what another change might bring. Things change the wrong way. "I understand," Ruby tells him. "I really do." She thinks of something she learned when she was very young, growing up on the edge of a wild, open ocean. When you get caught in a rip, you have no choice but to give in, to go where the water wants to take you. The force of the rip will eventually dissipate, but only if you let it carry you far enough out to sea. Safety comes from moving with the current until you are free of it, and then only then can you turn and swim like hell for the shore. Ruby knows how to navigate the natural phenomena that is a changeable ocean. Why should it be any different with a natural disaster like love? She asked Josh. "No one ever ends up where they started, but you do make it home when the time is right. Yeah, if you have kept your head while being tossed about. Sometimes it's surrender, not struggle, that saves a life." Ruby does not call Ash. He is the one to text her. Says he heard a rumor at work suggesting she helped solve a major crime. Holy shit, Jonesy, what an adventure. I can't wait to talk to you about it. In New York City, maybe. She knows he means no harm when this cavalier response, but she also wonders when Ash will ever take her seriously, knowing the answer is implicit in the question. He does not want her to be serious. He's escaped from serious, and this is a part of their bargain she can no longer uphold. Now that the something she has wanted to happen has so thoroughly happened, now that she is unsure whether she is the same woman who said yes to Ash after she knew he was engaged, that version of herself seems irreconcilable with the strong, capable Ruby who sat in front of Detective O'Brien and detailed her encounters with the man who killed Alice Lee, offering up enough perceptive information that will be considered in the looking back this crime to be the steady hand that turned a complex murder investigation towards its conclusion. This is not a woman Ash had ever known. This is the woman she wants to be. "I don't want you to come here, Ash," she eventually responds. "You should commit to your fiancé. You've made your choice and I don't want to keep you from it. Go get married. Time for us to let go." Ruby stares at the ceiling for a full hour after sending this text. They say it's the truth that sets you free, but sometimes it's a lie that does it. There is no reply. Ash will not reply. She lets herself wallow one last time. Aches of the image she has crafted of them together in New York. Tastes daydreams of dark bars and glittering rooftop, rolls them around on her tongue, feels the tang of her yearning for him in her mouth, swallows. There was life she did not get to live. It was so close, but she could not continue holding something already gone. I loved you. She does not send this final truth across the ocean. The words are too small for this moment, this ending. Only silence is large enough to hold her sorrow tonight. There was one other print in the pack, the very first snap, long before all those photographs of New York were taken, when that black and white film was loaded, when instructions were given by a teacher to his student. Here's where you look, because this is a rangefinder. You start with 2 images, and this focusing lever helps you bring them closer together. It takes a little time to get the hang of it, but eventually from those 2 different views you end up with a single clear image. See? He was so close, the camera so intimate, that I turned away right as he snapped the picture. My hair's a silver glow across the frame, phosphorus in the dark, and though you cannot see my face, I know that I'm laughing. This is not the kind of thing you forget. Thank you for listening.